Welcome, everybody. Welcome to this very special creative morning, the community-driven gathering for all creative and inspiring people. Welcome. My name is Tobias, and I am here with Paula.
Hi, everyone. My name is Paula. I'm the co-host of Creative Mornings Munich. Today, we have a very special session that is a joint session together with the Prague chapter. Welcome people from the Prague chapter and also from the Munich chapter. We're gonna have an amazing morning.
Yes. Thank you for being here with us. Before we start, just some side notes. Right now, all of you are unable to speak up. You are muted, but don't worry, your time will come. Right now, you can express yourself through the chat here in Zoom. So feel free to say hello to our co-creators and just feel free to ask questions here until you have your time to unmute yourself and talk. So that's all for the formal part. But right now, let's start with what is Creative Mornings, Paula?
Well, for those who are for the first time in a Creative Mornings session, Creative Mornings is a nonprofit organization founded in 2008 in New York with the purpose of gathering the creative community together once a month, enjoy some coffee. I hope all of you have some coffee or tea and listening to an inspiring talk. Today, we are over 223 cities over the world, having 20,000 of attendees every month. So thank you for supporting Creative Mornings.
Several months ago, there was this amazing event held by Creative Mornings Global called Creative Mornings Recharge Extravaganza, when we hosts have the possibility to meet each other and just to play around with this amazing tool of Zoom. That was the moment that we started to think about this joint event. We started from Prague to look for other similarly minded chapters around us. We can reach out and make possible this event. And I'm so super grateful that Creative Morning Munich just go with it with us and that we are here today. I will use this screen, this GIF, and just ask you to turn on your cameras if you are willing so we can see all the amazing people that are here today and just feel all the emotions that are coming from your way to our speakers and to ourselves. So feel free to turn on your camera, and if you don't like to, it's okay. We can see your names, and that's enough for now. So Creative Morning Prague and Creative Mornings Munich right now, this morning.
So yeah, the Munich chapter has already around 8 years, and I want to thank to all of our volunteers, Katia, Tatiana, Maria, Alfonsina, Marco, Nico, and Server, Paulat, to work every month very hard together, and Dana from the newsletter, to work very hard every month and make possible these events to be with you the last Friday of the month. Please remember that feel free to tag us on social media. You can see your Instagram name on the screen and also our hashtag.
Yes, and also if you would like to, you can follow Creative Mornings Prague primarily on Instagram or Facebook, but there are several other places you can find us. And Creative Mornings Prague was founded 9 years ago. The next month will be our anniversary, 9th anniversary. And this morning is our 97th mornings we already organized. So I'm super grateful for this. And also I would like to thank our team, which consists of Katerina, of Vladislav, of Apollena, I'm terrible at names. I'm really sorry, Misha. and other volunteers. Thank you so much for being with us. And the major part, the major source of information is our newsletter. Please do subscribe to our newsletter, both Munich and Prague, to receive all the most actual info right into your mailing basket, and just go to CreativeMornings.com, find proper city and subscribe here.
Great. And talking about newsletters, let's talk about one of our global sponsors, that is MailChimp. MailChimp has been with Creative Mornings around 11 years. And thank you, MailChimp, for being supportive with Creative Mornings all these years. Thank you.
And also thank you, Skillshare, for being our most recent global partner. Skillshare is a perfect place for your personal education. And a lot of Creative Morning speakers do have their own courses here, so feel free to explore the Skillshare area.
And also very important, we want to thank our local sponsors in Munich. Thanks to Riva Studio and Milanode for being supporting the Munich chapter. You can see their information on the chat also. Thanks.
Also, thanks to you, to Creative Mornings community who supports us as a Creative Mornings Prague through darujme.cz page, where all of you can drop a penny or two to support our activities. Thank you. And a huge thank you for all of you who are here today with us. You are the very reason we are doing all of this. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you very much to all the community. Finally, here you can see that the May themes is resilient, proposed by the Dallas chapter, and the illustration is from Nikki Dion. Thank you very much. And now, before we finally start with our speakers, let's have a few words from Katerina from the Prague chapter. She has very interesting questions for you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Katerina from the Prague chapter, and I'm here for with a short warm-up activity for you, just to get to know each other a little bit and to see how you're doing today, this morning. So right now, I would like to ask you all to go to Miraboard, to click the link that you can see in the chat on Zoom. And when you get there, it's a huge board with different things to explore. Yes, I can see you joining. Great, great. First of all, if you want to see how to zoom in and zoom out on Miro, you can use either your touchpad, or you can use the zoom wheel on your mouse together with control or the command key. Or the last option is to use the navigation with plus and minus that you have in the lower right corner of your screen, probably. Okay, I see there's a lot of you already. Great. So I guess you figured it out yourself. Let's start on the left side. You can see that we have a huge drawing board, which is titled Unleash Your Creativity. And this is a place where you can draw during the whole talk if you want to join forces, and we can work on a collaborative art piece with the theme Ultimate Holiday Postcard. So if you feel like drawing something, you can use the pen and draw during the talk or right now or whenever you feel like doing it. The second place you can join is the Wall of Connections, where you can share something about yourself, your job, your residence, and whether you're looking for some kinds of work connections or free time connections, whatever you like to share. So you can use some of the post-it notes, take the ones on the right, move them to the left and edit them. Just fill in your text and share something about yourself. Okay, great. And now let's go to the questions part. You will have time later to come back to this, and you can edit the walls with connections and pictures while we are listening to our speakers. Okay, so let's move to question number 1, and make sure that your sign with the arrow is blue. As you can see, it's marked here, but I can see that there's a lot of you now, so it's probably all of us. So the question number 1 is, how many times have you visited Creative Mornings sessions? Please show us with your cursor, like how many times have you joined, attended, and let's see this as a little bit of a research of how often the guests are visiting. So, did you move to the number that you wanted to show? Okay, thank you very much. Looks like a lot of people have been regulars, joining 10 or maybe even 20 times already. Great.
This is so fun.
I can see everybody moving around. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's see question number 2. And this question is, what did you have for breakfast today? This means if you managed to have a breakfast already. If you didn't, you can just choose a drink or you can stay out of the board or maybe share with us in the chat. But for now, let's see. Okay, it's a lot of people with breakfast yogurt or oatmeal and a lot of people with coffee. No huge surprise here, but I can see some fruit lovers as well. That's nice. All right, and now can you show me whether you prefer coffee or tea to drink with your breakfast? Just a quick vote. Oh, that's a lot of people for both options, but it might be, I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, but a lot of tea drinkers and coffee lovers as well. All right, so let's move to question number 3. And here you can show us where you are right now. From what place did you join today? You can zoom closer if you want to be more specific with the place where you're staying. Okay, you can see a lot of people in Munich and Prague, obviously. But I can also see someone in Austria, someone in France. Oh, and Poland, no. In Croatia, maybe. Cool. No one outside of Europe. Yeah, and it seems like we all gathered. Nice. Okay, thank you guys. Let's move to question number 4. This is related to your job. So can you show us what is your professional situation right now? Okay, mostly employed visitors, but also some people self-employed with some freelancers. Cool, thank you very much. We'll be happy to see what your jobs are. You can share on the contact board. We'll be very pleased to know what you're working on. And how has your week been so far? Show us. I hope there'll be a lot of smiley faces. Okay, some sleepers, many happy people, some exploding brains. I hope this was safe. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us for these questions. And now, as I said, you can come back to the wall of connections, share something about you, your job, and whether you want to connect or share some of your interests with us. Feel free to share links for your profiles on social networks or your web pages or some kind of contact that you want to use. And also feel free to collaborate on our ultimate holiday postcards. So that's all for now. You can come back to Miro while you're listening to our speakers. And now I give my words to Katja. and we can start.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katarzyna. This was so much fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. Really, really cool. So I highly encourage you to definitely go back tomorrow to contribute to the beautiful postcard that we're going to share later on as well. And thanks again for you guys for being here this morning. I'm super excited. It's the first time both chapters are doing a joint session, and we decided to go for a panel discussion that I'm going to moderate. So I'm Katja Giri. I'm the host of the Munich chapter. And yeah, I'm really excited to be able to moderate this panel today. I am in a great company, as you may see. So next to me are Barbara Berger. She's a mindset and success trainer, super exciting. And Vladislav Severa, who is an entrepreneur in the, in the field of education technology and longevity technology as well. He's going to tell us more about that as well. You both, Barbara and Vladislav, you have amazing professional stories. I was enjoying us chatting and meeting and learning more about what you do. So I'm really, really excited about this panel. Now, the topic this month is resilient. So before we actually start, I want to put some framework to today's panel. So I wanted to check, what is resilience? What does it mean to be resilient? And before I ask you, give you the word, I actually checked the Oxford Dictionary, and it says that being resilient means being able to withstand or to recover quickly from difficult conditions. Makes sense to me, but I'm wondering if you had to define it, how would you define it? Maybe Barbara, let's start with you. What is resilient? What does that mean to you? There we go.
Thank you. So hello, everybody. Good morning. Thanks, Katja. Well, my definition of resilience wouldn't be completely different from what the Oxford Dictionary says. However, I have to say, up until a few years back, I did not really have a definition for it. It first came to my attention when I started reading about Sheryl Sandberg's book. I think she brought that term to a lot of people's attention when she wrote Option B about her journey after losing her husband. And I think now, in the time that we're currently in, this term becomes even more prominent and even more present to people's minds, because the time that we're facing right now, what we've just gone through last year, this is really a time where we could all use resilience, right? And we all need it now. We need it in the future. And I think this is, probably also why this topic was chosen as May's topic, and, very timely manner. So I think, it definitely, it refers to people coming back from difficult circumstances. And isn't this what we've all, individually and globally have just gone through? So, let's make sure we're all resilient and can leverage this skill and this trade for ourselves, for, our families, our teams, and as a community, and use it, make the best out of it.
Yeah. Thanks. It's definitely very, very interesting times right now. And I think that the topic definitely fits very well in the context. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Barbara. So Vladislav, how would you define resilient? What is your take on it?
Well, I also would agree entirely with the general definition to withstand difficult conditions. Only the difficult conditions mean every time something different, I think. So the complexity behind resilience is that you never can expect what the next difficult condition will be, and you never can be really prepared for completely everything. And looking at my life cycle, when I was fresh graduate and joining my first employer, probably the difficult condition was hard work, because that was really long shift and hard work and very intensive work. But back then I was very young and I was enjoying the hard work as I was enjoying, sports or whatever else what was hard enough. But later on, people realized that the difficult conditions may mean something different, family difficulties, as Barbara mentioned, some of us are facing really hard situations, stresses in the work, responsibility for which you haven't been prepared because that was new to you. And the coronavirus conditions were also bringing something totally unexpected and totally new to many of us. So I think that you can't be prepared for everything. You can be resilient against something, but not against everything. But you can build the resilience over time, perhaps through increased mindfulness or growing experience. And also the older a person is, the more relaxed with the unexpected matters you may become. So there are ways how to become generally more resilient.
Cool. Would you say, for both of you, that would you consider yourself a resilient person? Vladislav, you can start.
Probably over time, I became more and more beaten, I would say, and therefore are ready for the next beating if it comes in terms of the unexpected conditions. And also, I probably started to know myself better. And if I know way that I will likely fail, I can mindfully avoid the failing situations or maybe prepare against them in advance. So yes, in a sense, probably now I am more resilient than 20, 25 years ago I have been.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. What about you, Barbara?
Yeah, good point that Vladislav just made. Over time, you grow, you gain more experience with everything that happens to you, everything that you go through. Ideally, you learn from it, and ideally, you take something out of it, no matter how good or bad it may be. So that also helps to strengthen your resilience. And personally, I would hope and think of me as a very resilient person. However, you never know what's going to happen to you, but you can do something for it. And we're going to touch on that later as well. You can definitely help grow your resilience. And I haven't had to consciously really focus on this myself, but I've gone through many situations in my life, in my career, where in retrospect, looking back, I know it was my resilience that helped me just come back and flip it to my advantage and go through it and take the best out of it, or make the best out of it, and learn from it. And in retrospect, then look back at the positive aspects of it and know that there was good in it. You just have to make it through the actual situation, and in the situation, keep going, keep growing, and keep believing in yourself. So I think confidence is probably a big aspect of it.
Mm. It's great that you mentioned as well, both of you, the time and the experiences and so on. So, I mean, if I look at your professional experiences, Barbara, you, after over 20 years of working in sales and business development, you went on the independent path. And Vladislav, you as well. So formerly you were working in corporate finance and data science. Today you're on the entrepreneurship path. You both went from those, let's say, large corporations to the entrepreneurship world. And I guess neither is easy, but I'm wondering, in which role would you say you needed to be more resilient, and why? Is it the path of independence? I know that a lot of people I saw at the beginning in the Miro board, there are freelancers in this talk. There are some self-employed people, and there are as well full-time employees in companies. So from your personal experiences, and Barbara, maybe we can start with you this time. Which side would you say you needed more resilience for?
That's a very interesting question. Very interesting question, because the thing that first came to my mind was, well, absolutely, when I started to, work on my own, work for my own, become self-employed, because, you're your own boss, you make your own decisions, you're responsible for everything, that you do, when you start something new, it's all up to you. But then, my second thought was, no, you need resilience in every situation. And even, as an employee in a quote unquote safe environment, you may face situations where you definitely need resilience. It may be the politics at work. It may be being laid off. It may be a tough project. It may be pressure. It may be the pressure between your work-life balance. It, may be personal situations that also affect your career. So I think there's not really that big of a difference when it comes to where you need more resilience. It's always a very individual path. So, on my personal, on my end, from my experience, I've needed resilience while I was in corporate working for small companies. I've experienced situations where I definitely needed it when I was working for large global corporations. And I've definitely needed it, since starting to work on my own. So I think, it's a skill that you can use in any situation that you're in, any time of your life. It's important to have it.
Mm-hmm. Vladislav, would you agree? Do you have a different experience?
I would say that I did need different sorts of resilience in the big corporation and different sort of resilience when I'm now independent and entrepreneuring person. And in the big corporation, the resilience was, for example, of the kind of when times are good and the economy is flourishing, everything is fine. But in the times of financial or economic crisis, you're suddenly also responsible for the bad things in the organization. So example of the frustrating, experiences were when, economy contracted and our team back then also needed to somehow reduce the size, and I was responsible for that. So I needed to explain to my long-term colleagues why, unfortunately, not anymore we can continue working together because of the difficult conditions. And that needed really sort of resilience. And I was not prepared at the beginning for that. So I only improved over time in at least attempting to deliver the hard messages in a nice way, really explain, being human, help them somehow, but still resilience was needed. Now, when I'm independent, probably the biggest resilient, feature which I need to be aware of, that there is no fallback option. There is no one I can look behind and he will push me forward, because that's me who's pushing forward the other people in the team. So the no fallback option, and therefore the way is only forward in a sense. That's the main realization now when I'm independent and in the freelancing, but entrepreneuring waters.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Very interesting. And you just mentioned something that made me think, and I want to react to. You said there are different kinds of resilience, right? We will get into this in a second, but I was just thinking, we hardly talk about resilience without mentioning the current COVID period, right? But before I dive a little bit deeper into this, I wanted to share that I read this article on Harvard Business Review, which explored which people or countries have been the most resilient during COVID. And it turns out, as this article says, that the most resilient people were those from the countries that were hit the hardest. And this suggests that you have to be in a hard situation in order to develop resilience. And maybe even in different situations, you develop different kind of resilience, what you, Vladislav, kind of mentioned. So I'm wondering, do you agree with this? Is being resilient a matter of past experiences, or are some people just born to be more resilient? And then, thinking even a little bit further, can people learn to be more resilient, or do they have to go through hard things or hard situations in order to develop this resilience kind of naturally? I know I evoked like a lot of things right now, but so in a nutshell, is being resilient really a matter of past experiences, or can you learn it, or can you be born with it? What would you guys say? Vladislav, we can start with you.
I think that the experience is more important than being naturally born resilient. That's my observation. And even if you're a hard person by nature, you cannot be prepared for everything what you didn't experience yet. So I think that your life track is bringing the resilience to you. And the art in that is not really to fall under the difficult circumstances, but there is a saying, hard conditions create hardened people. And I truly believe that this is true. And for the COVID itself, you may be right that the people who did have, the biggest impacts of it, unfortunately, on their lives probably went out the most hardened at the end, and will be the more prepared than the people who did have it comfortable and somehow survive the COVID period easily. So I think that also the COVID period, however difficult and bad experience it is for most of us, at the end of it, maybe the entire population, entire countries will be suddenly different and better prepared for the next hard conditions than we were prior to the COVID period.
Mm-hmm. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I would also say that experience your what you experience in your childhood, what you learn when you grow up, how strong you become, when you're a child, that definitely, makes more of a difference to whether you're resilient or not than what you inherit genetically. As we know, that also plays a role, but the more important factors are definitely, your programming, basically, how your mind is being programmed. When you're a child, when you grow up through school, through education, through what you hear at home, et cetera, and then at a later part in life, through your experiences when you go through hard times. I don't think it's automatic that people become resilient because they go through hard times, but I think it can help. And overall, yeah, as you said, Katja, populations, countries that have been hit hard, they tend to, more resilient people tend to evolve out of it because they have experienced it, they had to go through it, they didn't have a choice, so they became more resilient. But overall, I think it's up to the individual what you make out of it, and up to a lot of different aspects, whether you go through a situation that's hard and become resilient, or whether you kind of dip and stay at the bottom and just say, oh, everything's bad and I don't have a solution for it. So it's up to the individual what you make of it.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting, and it makes me think, we're talking about COVID experience, countries going through difficult times versus, individuals. So I'm wondering as well, could we say that resilience is a cultural thing, that there are certain people or nations who are more resilient because of the country they live in? So, I mean, Barbara, you're German, Vladislav, you're Czech. I don't know if already between the two countries / cultures there could be something. Could we say, I'm making it up, that the Americans are more or less resilient because of certain history, or Palestinians? I mean, right now, like in the past weeks, things have been happening in the region. Could we say that they, by just the basically environment they're in, that they are more resilient than some other people? Would you have any thoughts on that?
I would say yes, there's some truth to it, because where this is coming from for an individual and for a society, it's our programming, as we were just talking about, and what the programming then results in is what I would call your paradigm, your beliefs, what you think about yourself, what do you think about the environment. And we have this as an individual, you have your individual programming. We're all programmed in a certain way, and that determines how resilient, for example, we are. But that also is true for a society, because there's also a cultural paradigm. Culture is a paradigm, and that is determined by the sum of what the individuals have gone through, what a society, what a country or a culture has gone through. So that also forms a paradigm, that also forms a programming. So it also forms and influences how resilient a society or a culture may be. And, while of course you can't really work with, and what in German we call the Schubladen, the drawers, you can't stick them all in one bucket and say, everybody in a certain country is resilient or everybody in another country is not, because they've always had it easy. But I think overall there is a tendency, for some countries to just be strong and come out of challenges much quicker than others may. And I don't know, and I'm curious, Vladislav, on your view on that. I don't think there's that big of a difference between the Czech Republic and Germany, maybe, we're all Central European. But, the countries that you mentioned, Katja, for example, Palestinians, or also looking at the US, there may be more differences when it comes to resilience than within the Central European region, for example.
I agree entirely. And as people, as individuals are having their own individual experiences and individual resilience, nations and countries are also having track records and history and experience, which is forming the collective resilience, I would say. And even religious groups probably are having their collective experiences and therefore their collective resilience. There are famous essays on how Protestants are different from other, groups within the Christianity, globally, and how Protestants therefore were, for example, more entrepreneurial. I don't know whether that's true or not, but as a sort of anecdotal evidence, maybe that's also serving the point that yes, even groups can have distinguished resilience because of their past experiences. So I guess that phenomenon really exists. And again, agree with Barbara that in the Central Europe, save some, differences between countries and nations, generally we tend to share the experience of the entire Europe for the past 1,000 or 2,000 of years. So I guess the nations in Europe are probably quite similar to each other in terms of resilience. But in the Middle East, in South America, the experiences are completely different for the entire nations. And therefore, probably the individual and collective resiliences are also at different levels or of different sorts.
Super interesting. So moving from the collective resilience more now back to the personal resilience, the question of the day, how to become more resilient? How can we, regardless of situations we're in, how can we conquer any challenge? Barbara, you say that you can use your power of your mind to reach any goal. Can you dive a little bit deeper into this? So what would be your tips on how to become a more resilient person?
Sure, happy to. So first of all, I would say, you have to understand that you have power over it, that you have control over it, and that you can take ownership of whether you're resilient or not, and of your mind. So that's what I work on, with my clients, and that's, what I talk about in my seminars is how your mind works. Once you understand that, you also understand how you can leverage the power of your mind to your advantage, whether it's in reaching a certain goal or whether it's going through a difficult situation. It's very similar, because you always, first of all, you have to know where you want to go. So that's when you set a big goal for yourself. You need the goal first. But also when you want to go through a difficult situation, you have to know that you want to make it through. You want to get out of it. So in essence, it's very, very similar. The starting point may be different, but it takes taking ownership of your destiny, if you will, and once you understand how your mind works, you can start using it to your advantage. And you can start, what I would say, building confidence, building persistence, determination. These are skills that you need and you can use on your way to get out of a challenging situation, to get through a challenging situation. And to make it through, and then ideally move on to a better situation, move on to where you really want to be. And this helps us in life in any situation. Once you know that, once you understand that, you can use that again and again. And, you know, as we talked about earlier, resilience is something that we typically don't only use once in our lives. We need it again and again, you know, sometimes in smaller situations, sometimes in much bigger and much more challenging situations. But it all also, you know, depends on one thing that I feel helps people a lot these times, in the current times, but also overall in life, is its attitude. And attitude is an interesting thing for most people. It's just, you know, how do you view things? But that's not really, you know, what attitude is. Attitude is much, much more. It's a combination of your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. So it's what you really make out of it. And once you also understand that you're in control of your attitude, and your attitude really affects everything. And once you start taking control and taking ownership of it, you can influence and you can change so much more than what you would have believed. And so most people don't exercise on this ownership. They don't really take ownership. They think, you know, it's part of their destiny. And most people don't believe that they can influence what they think. They can influence how they feel, and they can influence then through that what they do and what happens to them. Most people, unfortunately, don't do this. But if you start doing it, you will realize how much more you're capable of, how much, you know, easier you can go through life, and, you know, how much quicker you can overcome challenging situations because you view them differently and you act differently, you feel differently, etc. So it's a combination. It may sound like a lot, but in essence, it's not difficult at all. It's not difficult. It's actually fairly simple. It just takes getting the understanding, and it just takes making a decision to work on it and to do it. That's my 2 cents on it. But as I said, I don't think it's very difficult. I think it's totally doable if you really, you know, take ownership of it and make a decision to do it.
Wow, that's inspiring. I have plenty of questions on, you know, but I'm gonna wait for Vladislav as well to touch on that, but especially on how to become more confident. Then can someone who is not confident still be resilient? You know, you both mentioned that, and I know that there are a lot of people who, you know, especially in hard situations, they're not necessarily very confident about themselves, about the situation. They don't necessarily think that they have so much power. Can they still, what would be tips for them, you know, to go through this in this moment, you know? But maybe Vladislav, before we go into this, you can also share from your side, what would you say would be tips to become more resilient, to conquer any challenge?
Well, I think that historically human species did have 2 instinctive reactions to stress. One was run away and the other was fight against it. And resilience is the fight against it. And if you want to fight against something, you need to understand your powers and your weapons. And maybe you don't, because that's a new experience for you. So you need to know yourself better. So knowing yourself better is maybe one of the equipments which can make you more resilient. And the other way how to become more resilient is to train, experience these stressful situations for a first time, for a second time, for a third time, and for a 10th time, it suddenly will be easier. And that's for things like, I don't know, public speaking, for example. You know, that's not for everyone, but after 10 failures, the 11th situation will be much easier, believe me. You know, I was through it. So there are ways how to make yourself more resilient. Still, it will not equip you completely for every situation, because there might be things which will constern you and you will not be prepared. But a confidence can be gradually built up, and you can start knowing yourself better. And for example, you can realize that you just need a time to react. to the stressing situation. That's not a matter of confidence. You only need to think twice. You shouldn't react immediately against something what is suddenly happening. Even that realization can help you, that it's just a matter of taking some time, thinking through it, digesting it, and only then reacting. But there are probably many techniques how to become, at least on the surface, more resilient. Seeing yourself from distance, that was one advice which did help me some while ago, that I do not need to immediately, react and feel everything what is happening to me. I can make a step behind me, look at it from distance and only then to react. Thinking of what is the right reaction, not to fall into your instincts and to immediate action, but thinking of what is the right thing I should do. That's also helping to rationalize the response to stresses. So there are probably many ways that one can become more resilient over time.
That's so interesting. I think you both kind of come to this point, and I guess this can also make Barbara's point even more tangible about controlling your thoughts, your actions. It's what Vladislav, you're also just mentioning, kind of not necessarily reacting very emotionally, but controlling your thoughts. Take a moment, compose yourself, look at the situation from distance, and instead of instinctively trying to be afraid or run away, rather thinking of how can you make the most out of it? How can you approach the situation in a different way? Is that, Barbara, how you would say this control of thoughts and actions that you were mentioning earlier works, or is there something else you would want to add to that?
Well, I would say there's a bit more to it, but that's an easy way to explain it. We tend to react emotionally, and sometimes we think that's a bad thing. That's not necessarily a bad thing, because what first comes to our mind, for example, also a lot of times comes from our intuition. And listening to that is important, and listening to that is learning to listen to that does make a lot of sense, because our intuition tells us something, and it comes from deep down inside. There's a reason for it. But reacting emotionally, as you were just saying, without understanding that we have control over how we react, what we do, how we think, that can be challenging, and that may not result in the right in pushing us into the right direction. So if you have an emotional reaction, there's nothing wrong with it, but then understanding that you can take control of how you feel, what you think, and then through that how you feel, and then what you do, that can make it easier for you to actually, overcome a challenge and go through it. And while it may not be easy every time, and your initial reaction may be a different one, the more you practice it, as Vladislav was saying, the more you practice it, the more you do it, the more you experience it, the easier it will get. Because, for example, when thoughts hit you and you start wandering off and worrying about a situation, then when you understand, how you can control your thoughts, you will all of a sudden realize, oh, do I really want to think that? Is that helpful? Does that serve me right now? No, I don't. So you have to understand to redirect your thoughts. And if you do this, of course, another day, the thought may still hit you, may come back, may haunt you again, or you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't sleep because you're worrying about something. But then again, you exercise your ability to control your thoughts, and you're asking yourself, that's how I teach it to my clients. I tell them, think about it. Do I want to think that right now? No, I don't. But you have to replace that thought with something else. You have to think, what do I want to think? What's serving me better? What do I really want to think? And how do I really want to feel? And the more you do it, the more easier it gets. And the more quicker you catch yourself on those thoughts, for example. And the quicker you can stop it, and the quicker you can learn how to change a situation and go through it and change it to your advantage.
Super interesting. So quickly touching upon the pandemic situation, you know, we all had bad thoughts at some point, you know, about the situation. You both, I guess, faced the pandemic as well with your respective businesses. Did you ever have a moment where you thought that you just wouldn't be able to recover from the situation? And if yes, how did you bounce back? You know, there are some people, maybe even in this session right now, who may have lost their jobs or who needed to pivot. You know, how did you experience anything during this past year? And if yes, how did you bounce back?
So I would dive into that. At the beginning of the pandemics, I was surviving, living still in a big corporation, not being an entrepreneur yet. And I was full of the feeling of heroism, to be honest. And the same was for the people around me, because we tried to do our best to help our clients, you know, our colleagues, to help everyone. That was raising the adrenaline. We were full of it. And really, that was the prevailing feeling. Now we must fight, and we will. But then the pandemic lasted much longer than we initially thought that it would. And the heroism was gone, and the endorphins were gone as well. And the true worries came, and I wouldn't say that I or my surroundings were worried about the job or losing it or not. We are, you know, adult people, so we will cope with it. But something what cannot be defended were the worry of losing a close person, and whether that was a colleague or a family member. That was something what probably none of us could have avoided, thinking of that outcome. So that was the main worry. And at the end, I even saw that in the pandemics, when so many things are changing, some jobs are lost, some economy, you know, directions probably will be closed for a prolonged period of time, but some other things will start to begin, which didn't exist before that. So I saw that that's a time to make more changes all at once. So that was also the period when I left the big corporation and became the solo entrepreneur and founder of a venture fund. And I do not regret, to be honest, because really I think that when the big changes are happening, you can add to it in a very positive way. You can also change yourself, start something new, start doing things which you didn't do before that. So not everything is really bad. And in terms of, for example, jobs, I think that as many jobs as will vanish thanks to the pandemics will also become existent, but in new branches of economy. So that's only a matter of redirecting yourself and redirecting your minds. These difficulties are curable. Other difficulties, other impacts of the pandemics, unfortunately, will not be curable, and they are having to do it with health.
Love it. It's a very positive take on it. Thanks for sharing. Barbara, what about you? Did you have a moment during the past year where you thought that you wouldn't be able to recover from it, or a hard moment? Yeah.
So I'm very grateful for honestly never having had a moment like that during the past year. I've had challenging situations, of course, more on a personal level, I would say, because I'm a single mom. My daughter was home, you know, homeschooling for most of the past year and a half, basically. And I had to, you know, manage and kind of reorganize our days, my work and everything. But I've never had a moment where I thought I wouldn't be able to resolve it. I wouldn't be able to go through it. We wouldn't be able to find a solution, etc. And I think on my end, it's because I know, you know, how to do it. I have the tools to do it. I've personally had much more difficult situations before, like a few years ago, when, you know, my whole life turned around, and I left corporate. I had to, you know, personally, I had to move. I had to reorganize my whole life and set it up new and start from scratch. Which I feel now in retrospect was much more difficult for me because it all had happened within half a year. So I almost feel like, you know, there's not much that could really throw me off anymore. And this past year, of course, when it all started and nobody knew what was going to happen, I also had a big question mark first. How am I going to, change the way I go about my business? How am I going to set it up? But there was never a moment where I thought I'm not going to be able to do it. I just had to come up with new ideas. And, going through it, of course, I also have moments where I thought, I'm sick of it, but I think, as I said earlier, there's always something good in it. And I think I saw it in the chat before, somebody said something similar. We may not see it right in that moment, but we will see it looking back. And there's a quote from Steve Jobs. I think he said, "You can never connect the dots looking forward. You can only, connect them looking back." And I think at some point, that's what I love to believe. At some point, we will see what we're able to take out of it, globally and as a society, what we'll learn from it, and hopefully there will be good in it for everybody. And everybody will be able to take something positive out of it as well, and we'll grow as a conscious beings. And I admire people that intuitively have changed their business around, have come up with completely new ideas, have found completely different ways all of a sudden to make money or to go about their business. I know it's not everybody's been able to do this, and I know for some people this has been very challenging. So I would hope that they also learn how to look forward and not look back anymore, and move on. And I think we can all come out of it as stronger and taking something from it, and something positive from it. So yeah.
Love it. So looking at the time, we're coming to the end of this first part of the panel, and I would love to open the floor for a few questions. I saw some questions in the chat, and I want you to react to these. There is a question about whether you use mindfulness or meditation for resilience. There is Richard who says that it works great for him. There is Alfonsina who says that it works really well for her as well, that she started meditating during the pandemic and that it made a big difference. Do you both practice meditation or mindfulness in any kind of way?
I personally use meditation. Yes, absolutely. I think it's a great tool, and you can use it in so many different ways. Most people, once they start getting into it, and meditation doesn't mean sitting there for an hour and not moving. It can be just 5 minutes, or it can be just 2 minutes. Calming your mind and focusing your mind, taking control of your thoughts, as I was talking about earlier. That's what meditation is, and quieting your mind, and then ideally also using it to your advantage, directing your thoughts, your mind into the direction that you want it to go. So I think for a lot of people, meditation can be an awesome tool. And there's so many extremely good meditations out there, easy ones, 10 minutes, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, how long ever you want to do it, you want to practice it. But it can be extremely helpful for people that feel anxious, that feel worried, that feel concerned about their day, their current situation, the global situation, whatever it is. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Vladislav, what about you?
I agree, it is useful, although I'm not practicing mindfulness mindfully myself, but maybe subconsciously I am. I can't judge it. But what I'm doing, and that may be related to mindfulness, I'm dreaming a lot, to be honest. And I'm sometimes asking, so what's standing between where I am now and the dream state, whatever the dream might be about, I don't know what, about the business purpose or business goal or about something else. And then I'm trying to walk at least directionally towards the dream end. So obviously that's not always possible. But the dreaming is helping as well. Hopefully I'm not too much of a daydreamer, but yeah, it may be also a sort of meditation of its kind, I would say.
Oh, absolutely. I would definitely, put that in the category of meditation. Meditation, for me is not the strict, Buddhist type of approach, maybe. It can also be visualizing and just, as you said, like dreaming of your goal, visualizing your goal and thinking of that and seeing that in front of your mind. That is a form of meditation, and that's extremely helpful, actually, because what you're thinking about in that case is what you want, where you want to go. So thinking about that makes you feel like that, makes you do the right things to get there. So absolutely.
So inspiring. I love it how as well you touched on, different ways of meditation. A lot of people, when you hear meditation, they see, this pose, sitting there in a still way for like whatever, half an hour and not being able to turn your mind off. But as you both say, I mean, there are different ways that can actually be very, very beneficial. There is as well another question from Marlon, whether a good way to train resilience is only either in a professional way or in a personal way, so working on your goals and so on. Would you say that both work, so that you can work on your resilience both in your personal life and in your professional life, or that there is one of the two that is better, easier, more relevant?
It depends on what's more stressing you, and sometimes you're more successful in the profession than in the personal life, and sometimes that's vice versa, or you have it balanced. So that really depends. But there is one thing supporting resilience which we didn't mention yet, and that's physical fitness. And probably I didn't appreciate it when I was a teenager or in my 20s, but now a little later, that's having a lot to do with resilience. Both like being fit obviously helps, being fit mentally as well. But there are things like if you run a marathon, and I'm not a marathon runner, little can surprise you with stresses in the other life. It can't be causing you worse feelings than the finish of a marathon. So things like those can prepare you for resilient events in your non-sports life as well. And nota bene, I also can observe, but that's maybe just my case. I like routine. So when I'm routinely walking or routinely running, my mind suddenly liberates itself and I can think completely freely, not even think of the running. It's automatic, but then the mind gets concentrated really a lot. And this is allegedly a feeling which the long distance walkers, like the St. Jacob journey, walkers are experiencing after 1,000 of kilometers. They stop viewing their body and their mind gets completely liberated. This is what I would want to try once, really walk the long distance, because I can imagine how the effect is working. And maybe that's also part of the meditation or a technique how to get into it and how to focus your mind and realize what is important and what is not.
Super interesting. Barbara, do you practice sports as well?
I do, but I would say much more casually. So I'm not a marathon runner either, but I do fully agree with Vladislav. Having a healthy body, definitely helps. And whatever it is that serves you, whether it's walking, whether it's fitness type of sport, whether it's running or any other kind of sport, making sure that your body is healthy and fit to some degree is absolutely helpful, because it doesn't help if your body aches and your mind is focused on that. So I think that's a very individual decision, what helps you to that degree, but it can be a big component of it. And to the question, whether I would focus on building resilience in personal or in professional life, or where it's easier to build it, I would say I wouldn't even focus on building resilience. I think I would focus on some of the other aspects, that I touched on, building confidence, finding a goal, working on your attitude, building or learning how to make decisions, and building persistence. If you have those, you will automatically be more resilient. And I don't think that you can take your personal life and your business life and view them completely separate, because they're always intertwined. That's why I ask people to look at their goals in life for both aspects, or maybe even more aspects, however you look at it, because we're not just a working individual and have our business or have our corporate job, and on the other side there's our personal lives. It always is intertwined, and so we need to know where we want to go in life overall, with our business or with our career and with our personal lives. And then ideally we define a goal that includes both, and we learn, how to become more confident, how to, become persistent, how to have the right attitude, how to work with our minds, etc. And resilience is kind of a byproduct of that, and we will become more resilient on the way.
Really inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I'm pretty sure that there are plenty of other questions as well, but I also myself have quite a few left. But seeing the time, we will need to wrap this part. However, if you have time, so I'm looking at everyone in the room, we have prepared something really cool for the next 10 minutes. And in particular, what we want to do is we want to use the feature of breakout rooms and offer the possibility to all of you guys to either ask further questions directly to Barbara or directly to Vladislav, or in case you don't necessarily want to ask questions, but you would like to network with people, we will be opening up breakout rooms where you can simply chat with people here. This is a part of the Creative Mornings community that we have been missing so much because we're not doing events live. Okay. Well, if there is anyone who would like to share any thoughts about the session, we would be happy to have a quick chat before everyone else comes back.
I wanted to share something. It's quite interesting at some point that it's a big world, and at the same time we were like, everyone was experiencing like the same thing. Like when I hear, I discovered meditation, I discovered like jogging or something like that, I just thought it was just okay, it's just not me. So everyone discovered something at some point. So I think it's quite interesting how we can turn the pandemic into another point of view. Like we became more human at some point. And I don't know, it's an experience that, of course, it's not nice having a pandemic, but I think if we're resilient and we like look this situation from another perspective, we will take a lot of things from here. And it was quite nice to share and like hear other experiences with pandemic. Now I'm not feeling alone.
That's really a good point. Thanks for sharing. Definitely, I think it's we will all look back at those past years, and kind of see that also what we went through. Mm-hmm. Of course, there may have been some harder situations. There are also some people who needed to leave, like who live alone, and they were really not happy with living alone, and maybe they got more resilient towards that. And there are a lot of people who had actually not an easy time, but as you said, it's important that we take action to a certain extent and try and still make the most out of it, right? Because we can't really change what happens to us, but we can influence the way how we're going to react to it. So I think that's something that is not always easy to do, but pretty strong as well. Okay. So we will be waiting for the rest of the team to come back for some closing remarks. Is there anything else you guys would like to share? How did you find this panel? Do you prefer panel versus speaking? Just one speaker sharing something, sharing their ideas for about half an hour?
I think I found it very interesting also because maybe it feels a bit more like now that we are confined, in our Zoom sessions and not meeting in person. It feels a bit more, let's say, closer to the real events because you see people interacting. You can also interact in the breakout rooms. So I think it's kind of like a good way to kind of like go back to our, let's say, normal way of meeting, like which will happen hopefully very soon. But I found
Hands up for everyone
interesting.
who misses in-person meetings and
Yeah.
coffees and breakfast. Yeah. Well, I guess I think we could also say that, and Mihaela, it would be interesting to see how you experience this in the Prague chapter. We needed to be quite resilient as well with Creative Mornings, adapting to this virtual environment. We started on our side, we started doing sessions on Facebook Live at the beginning, then we switched into Zoom. We were afraid, how it's gonna work, are people gonna turn the cameras on and so on. So I could say we needed to develop a lot of resilience from that point as well.
Yeah, we were at first we didn't know how long this will last. So we were full of energy into making it digital, and it's fine. It will last only a couple of months, so it's fine. But then it didn't, and we kind of lost our drive a little bit. And you could see that people prefer in-person meetings as well. So we certainly had, I guess, hard times to adjust to the digital form as well here.
Yeah.
Hello, we are
Good.
back.
So we are getting people from the breakout rooms back in the main channel. Let's give it a couple more seconds for everyone to come back. So first of all, we were a little bit sorry that it just cut us out and people were in the breakout rooms, but I hope that you guys made the most out of it. We are learning as well. And, I think it goes pretty well with the theme of today's session, which is resilient. We're trying out new features. We're trying to bring the sessions closer to you guys and recreate this experience of, networking and chatting and just being together and exchanging with people who are thinking in similar ways that we are. So I hope you don't mind and that nevertheless you had an interesting discussions. Tobias, Paula, is there anything you wanted to share before we wrap it up?
Yeah, just a couple final words.
Perfect.
Thank you once again for everybody who joined us today. It was a pleasure to have you, and special thank you to Vladislav and Barbara to be our speakers today. What else to say? I hope that we will meet each other during some future time. In the meantime, please feel free to follow our newsletters, both Creative Mornings Prague and Creative Mornings Munich.
Yeah, thank you very much for being here today and be part of this great experiment, doing a joint session together with the Prague chapter. And please stay tuned in our social media and newsletter for our next event in June. So have a great weekend and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you so much,
sorry.
everyone.
One
Happy
more.
Friday.
Bye.
See you, everyone. Bye-bye.